Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. So in this video, I will be discussing about a novel, A Passage to India by E.M. Forster, summary and analysis of part 1. So let's start. So let's begin with the introduction of Edward Morgan Forster. So Edward Morgan Forster, E.M. Forster was basically belonged to middle class. He was a homosexual. He wanted to conform to the society, but at the same time he does not. He has written more works like Other Side of the Hedge, that is a short story. A Passage to India is the masterpiece and final work of him. Many of his novels examine class differences and hypocrisy. This novel took 11 years in total to complete. His motive for going to India was to see Syed Ross Masood, a young Indian man whom he would befriended in 1906 and with whom he was deeply in love. He used to add a lot of words from Urdu because he visited subcontinent for pursuit of his homosexual desires. He was aware of people because he visited land. In this novel, we are going to talk about and find a lot about the description of setting. This novel is divided into 3 parts. The first one is mosque, the second one is cave, and the third one is temple. Now in this video, we are just going to discuss about the first part, that is the mosque. So what happened in chapter 1 of the mosque? So the first chapter of A Passage to India describes the setting of the novel. Setting is Chandrapur, and this place is common and not so beautiful. Except Marable Caves is beautiful. Chandrapur is a city of gardens with few fine houses. From the imperial period of Upper India, the British buildings and the rest of Chandrapur are connected only by Indian sky. So let's move towards second chapter. In this chapter, we are going to talk about Dr. Aziz. Dr. Aziz is basically the protagonist of the novel. So Dr. Aziz is an Indian Muslim, arrives late to his friend Hamidullah's house, where Hamidullah and Mahmud Ali are engaged in a debate over whether it is possible for an Indian and an Englishman to be friends. Hamidullah, who studied at Cambridge when he was young, contends that such a cross-cultural friendship is possible in England. The men agree that Englishmen in India all become insufferable within 2 years and all English women within 6 months. Aziz preferred to happily ignores the English. Hamidullah takes Aziz behind the parda to chat with his wife. Hamidullah's wife scolds Aziz for not having remarried after the death of his wife. Aziz, however, is happy with his life and sees his 3 children at his mother-in-law's house often. Muhammad Latif is the lazy man sitting in the dining room. He was a relative of Hamidullah. Aziz recites poetry for the men. During dinner, Aziz receives a sermon from his superior Major Calendar, the civil surgeon. Annoyed, Aziz bicycle away to Calendar's bungalow. When Aziz bicycle tire deflates, he hire a tonga. As Aziz is speaking with a servant on the porch, Mrs. Calendar and her friend Mrs. Leasley rudely talks with Aziz hire tonga for their own use. Aziz decides to walk home. On the way, he stops at his favorite mosque. To Aziz, the mosque with its beautiful architecture is a symbol of truth of Islam and love. They are trying to analyze the difference between native and British. In the beginning, they are nice, but then they are showing rude behavior with the natives. They are trying to differentiate how to behave with Browns, and when Brown visited England, they behaved differently. So there is imperialism in this chapter. Aziz suddenly notices an English woman in the mosque and yells at her angrily, for she is trespassing in a holy place for Muslim. however, and explains that she removed her shoes upon entering and that she realizes that God is present in the mosque. Aziz is impressed. The woman introduces herself as Mrs. Moore. She is visiting her son, Ronnie Hillslop, the city magistrate. Aziz and Mrs. Moore discover that they each have 2 sons and 1 daughter. Aziz senses Mrs. Moore's friendly sympathy towards him, a sense confirmed when she speaks candidly for her distaste for Mrs. Callender, the major's wife. Aziz pronounces her an Oriental. Aziz escorts to her to the door of White's Only Club. So let's move towards chapter 3. So inside the club, Mrs. Moore joins her travelling companion, a young English woman named Adela Quested. They sit in the billiard room in order to avoid the performance of the play Cousin Kate that is taking place in the next room. Adela and Ronnie are engaged. Mr. Turton, the collector of the Chandrapur, enters and speaks highly of Ronnie as the type of young man he likes. Adela expresses her desire to see the real India. She wants something more than stereotypical elephant ride most visitor gets. Cyril Fielding, the principal of local government college, passes through the room and suggests her if she wants to see real India, then she go and see some Indians, but some club ladies said to her that Indians are creepy. Mr. Turton, eager to please Adela, promised her to manage bridge party so Adela can meet some Indians. On the way home, Mrs. Moore talked about mosque incident and Dr. Aziz to Dr. Aziz and Ronnie think that that person was Englishman, but when she realized that he is Indian, he become angry. Ronnie declares his intention to report Aziz to Major Callender, but Mrs. Moore dissociates him. Ronnie said to her mother not to tell Adela about Dr. Aziz because she will make her mind that English people never treat them fairly. They finish talk and go to bed. So this is chapter number 3. Now let's move towards chapter number 4. Mr. Turton invites several Indian gentlemen to propose bridge party at the club. The Indians are surprised by the invitation. Mahmood Ali suspects that the Lieutenant General has ordered Turton to hold the party. The Nawab Bahadur, one of the most important Indian landowner in the area, announces that he appreciates the invitation and will attend. Some accuses that Nawab as a cheap man, but most Indians highly respect him. The narrator describes the room in which the Indian gentlemen meet. The narrator describes Mr. Greyford and Mr. Sorley, missionaries on the outskirts of the city. Now let's move towards chapter number 5. So at the bridge party, the Indian guests stand at one side of the tennis lawn while English stand at the other. Adela, Mrs. Moore, Ronnie, Mrs. Turton discusses Indian clothing. Several women discusses about the play. Mrs. Turton take Adela and Mrs. Moore to visit to a group of Indian. Mrs. Turton addresses the Indian woman in crude Urdu and then asks Mrs. Moore and Adela if they satisfied. One of the Indian women speak English and Mrs. Turton is surprised to learn that the women know English. Mrs. Moore asks one of them, Mr. Batrachia, if she and Adela can visit her at home. Mrs. Batrachia agrees to host the English woman the upcoming Thursday and her husband promises to send his carriage for them. Adela and Ronnie dine with Miss Macbridge and Miss Derrick. Ronnie asks his mother about Adela. Mrs. Moore explains that Adela feels that English are unpleasant to Indians. Ronnie is dismissive, explaining that the English are in India to keep the peace, not to be pleasant. Mrs. Moore disagrees, saying that it is the duty of the English to please to Indian as God demands love for all men. Mrs. Moore instantly regrets mentioning God. Ever since she has arrived in India, her God has seemed less powerful than ever before. So let's move towards chapter 6. Distracted by several surgical cases, Aziz does not attend the bridge party. While busy at the hospital, he encounters Major Callender, who is furious. Aziz did not appear when summoned on the night of the play. Despite his snobbishness about Dr. Panalai, Aziz had planned to drive to the bridge party with the low-born Hindu in the latter's carriage, partly because Panalai has hard time controlling his horse, but when the time comes he decided not to go because today is the anniversary of his and his wife by the time she died, bearing their third child. Aziz then forgot about his wife. Panalai returned to the party. He was annoyed that that is why he never come, and Aziz make an excuse that he went to post office. Panalai was angry that he never helped him by managing the horse. He gets invitation from Mr. Fielding as well. Now let's move towards chapter 7. Mr. Fielding arrived in India late in his life when he had already passed 40. He was a good-tempered fellow with great enthusiasm of education. He has no racial feeling because he has matured in different atmosphere. The wives of English officers dislike Fielding for his liberal racial views. He discovered that it is possible to keep company with Englishmen and Indians, but to keep company with English women he must drop Indian. Okay, then Aziz arrives at Fielding house. Aziz making Fielding guess what he looks like. Aziz offer Fielding collared stud, and Fielding asked why people wear collars, so he replied not to notice the of police who take little notice of Indian in English dress. Then Mrs. Moore, Adela, Godball professor, and Aziz discusses about mysteries. Mrs. Moore claims that she like mysteries but hate muddles. Now let's move towards chapter number 8. So Adela tells Ronnie that Fielding, Aziz and Godball planning a picnic at the Maribor Caves for her and Mrs. Moore. He then make fun of his collared stud. Adela requested and decided not to marry Ronnie, and he also heard by this news. They decided that they shall remain friends. Ronnie suggests a car trip to see Chandrapur, and the Nawab Bahadur offers to take them. This is a slight accident as the car serves into a tree near embankment. Adela thinks that they ran on the buffalo or henna. When Mrs. Derrick finds that, she offers to drive all of them back into the town except Harris, the Eurasius Chaucer. The Nawab Bahadur scolds him. So this is a story about that Adela basically decided not to get married in this chapter. Now let's move towards chapter number 9, in which Aziz fell ill with fever, and basically Hamidullah and Mahmood and Mr. Haq basically they are deciding and they are talking about education, about Indian education. Now let's move towards chapter number 10. So opposite Aziz bungalow stand a large unfinished house belonging to two brothers. A squirrel hangs on it, seeming to be only occupant of the house. Moore notices come about that and these animals, and they were just discussing about opposite of Aziz bungalow there is the house that is basically belongs to two brothers. In this chapter they are just discussing about these things, while in chapter number 10 Aziz show Fielding a picture of his wife, a custom uncommon in Islamic tradition. Aziz tell him that he believes in the parda but would have told that wife that Fielding is his brother, and thus she would seen him just as Hamidullah. Fielding was happy that he gave kind words about him. He asked to Fielding why not he get married to Quested, and he said she is a prig, a pathetic product of Western education, and she is engaged to city magistrate. Aziz discovered that Fielding was a warm-hearted but not a wise man, because basically Aziz offered him to get married to Adela Quested, but he basically rejected that she is already engaged to city magistrate. So that's all in the chapter in the part 1. That's all from my side. If you have any queries, you can ask me in the comment section. Please like, subscribe and share my channel. Thank you for watching.